So you are a DoorDash driver and you've been driving for a little while and you're trying to figure out, why am I not making as much per day as I used to? What's up guys, my name's Chris and today I'm just going to do my take on what I see going on across the DoorDash community in Australia. It might transfer across to America, might be some similar factors occurring as well, but today's one will be Australian focused. So I've definitely felt it myself dashing for a day, and I've seen that my total take home across a day has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, even though I'm still putting in the same amount of time and hours. I'm following my acceptance criteria that I always have, I'm working the same zones that I always have, and I'm just seeing a deduction happening. It's just less and less and less as time goes on. Maybe you're seeing something similar. So today I'm just going to have a look at 4 different pillars to try and understand what's going on here. We're going to have a look at driver numbers, customers ordering, driver logged in saturation, and our macro factor of the post-pandemic. So first, let's investigate driver numbers. Is it because there's too many drivers signed up to these platforms in your zone? Now, when it does come across to a brand new person interested in doing gig delivery driving for DoorDash and they put in their postcode or their zip code overseas, it does check if there are spots for new drivers to sign up on the campaign that they're running. If it's full, it says unfortunately you can't sign up at this certain point. If they don't have enough drivers or they think they don't have enough drivers, they'll allow the person to continue with the sign up. Now for each zone, does DoorDash have it right? Is there too many drivers in the zone currently and they're still taking it in? Do they need to adjust these thresholds? I don't know, because they'd come down to each specific zone. But in Australia, I think there's bigger things happening right now, and we can't blame new drivers signing up for it starting to slow down. So if it's not new drivers signing up, let's move across to customers and their ordering. So the customer is a key pillar here. If a customer is not placing orders, there's no offers for you to accept as a driver. So what you are telling me, Chris, is if there are no customers, there are no orders for me to drive? Spot on, dudes and dudettes. And unfortunately right now, we are entering tough economic times. So customers are looking at their discretionary spending. The cost of living is raising across the board from inflation, and people are looking at their budgets. What can I cut to make my life a little bit easier? So dudes and dudettes, let's take a walk down memory lane. Let's think back to 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, think about how much you were earning from your job and what your rent or your mortgage was back then, what you're spending on groceries, what you're spending on fuel. Did you have more money left over at the end of the week? Could you afford to splurge a little bit? Fast forward to now, your rent or your mortgage has gone up, and that's really starting to dig away at the average Australian's discretionary income. So that splurge money is being decayed away from the cost of living raises. So when we look at the CPI, the price of everything increasing, and then we look at wages and income coming in, we're seeing a larger and larger gap, and that gap is discretionary spending disappearing. A perfect example, let's look at Coles' low price on these eggs, $9.80 for a dozen eggs. Were eggs $9.80 3 years ago? No, they weren't. They were reasonable, and you could afford a fucking omelette in the morning. With discretionary spending down and consumers reviewing their budgets, let's not also forget that the cat is out of the bag. The average consumer is now fully aware that food delivery from these apps like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Menulog, it's a lot more expensive than just going to the restaurant yourself to eat it. Restaurants have inflated the menu prices of the items to cover the commission costs they're being charged by the delivery apps. On top of these inflated prices, when you add in delivery fees and extra service charges that the delivery apps put in there, it's not a great deal for them, and they know that. So it really comes down to, if I want my food delivered, this is a premium service that I'm going to pay a lot more for. And also guys, let's not downplay that getting fast food or restaurant food, that is a luxury cost too. It's a premium cost. They could just eat food from the supermarket, but they're making a choice to get fast food or get something from the restaurant, and they're making a choice even further at that point to get it delivered and pay exorbitant fees through a food delivery app. Fortunately, going through the budget, that's one of the first things people will start to cut. And that doesn't mean they'll completely stop using the services though, guys. Some customers, it may be, instead of using it several times a week, I'm just going to use it once or twice a week. So they'll be cutting back on using these services, which I think we're seeing right now. We're seeing less and less orders coming in from the customer end. Third thing to address is driver saturation from logged in drivers. So for those overseas in America, you're like, yeah, we have TopDash, a program, and that is super cool. So let's talk about how drivers used to be able to log in Australia versus how they log in now. So first tier of driver was TopDashers. TopDashers can log in at any point they want into any zone they want. They had no restrictions for it. They could just click, yep, I would like to dash now. Alternatively, The other way that Dashers used to do it was they'd schedule. They'd say on a Saturday, I'd like to work from 8 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night. And the third way they could log in is if a zone was busy and it turns red, they could jump in and dash now. So most of that's still the current pathways that drivers can do it, but there's been one change, and that's just scheduling. So previously, zones only had so many scheduled spots available for drivers. Some drivers would clamour to try lock in their schedule, so they made sure that they had work for a specific time that week. And that worked fine because it generally restricted the amount of drivers logged into a zone. So if a zone could only support orders for, say, 10 delivery drivers, that's all that could log in, and you might get a couple of top dashers logging in on top of that. So if a zone could support 10 delivery drivers logged in at once that schedule's filled, no one else could schedule in to jump into that dash. Now, top dashers could jump in even though the schedule was full, and sometimes if all them drivers are on and there was a surge of orders happening and it turned red, a couple of extra drivers could jump in at that point to help balance out that demand. But the change that's occurred is open scheduling. So instead of there being only 10 slots available for a driver, or 15 or 5 spots, just depending on the size of the zone, that's been removed completely. Where a zone could only support 10 delivery drivers before it turned around and said there's no more available time slots, now 20, 30 drivers could log in, which causes saturation on the orders. Where the orders might have just flowed nice and evenly and smoothly between 10 drivers, now you have drivers waiting between orders because there's too many drivers logged in. I think this is the biggest factor out of all 4 of these factors hurting drivers right now on the road. If you used to be able to go back-to-back orders and keep yourself busy through a day, now you can't. Maybe have a 20-minute gap or a 10-minute gap between orders. And all them gaps is what decays your earnings away. And to play devil's advocate, yeah, Chris, but before they opened the schedule up, it was very difficult for me to book in shifts. Yes, but the shifts you did manage to get were generally busy, weren't they? Do you remember? Do you remember when you were busy doing this job? Do you remember when you didn't have to multi-app? Personally, I would rather not be able to log into a zone because it's all booked out and the schedule's full, as opposed to wasting my time logging into a zone that's got 50 other drivers logged in at the same time and sitting around waiting 20 minutes between orders, not making even minimum wage. So this open schedule, this is a huge problem. This is what's hurting drivers' pay more than anything right now. I ran a quick survey across on DoorDash Driver Australia Facebook group just to make sure it's not just my zone, and it was pretty resounding across the country that everyone's facing this right now. I'm surprised on the poll results that someone didn't just add in the option saying, I hate KFC. And then the data would have been skewed and everyone would have just said, yeah, you know what, I don't care about open schedules, I just hate KFC. And they all would have clicked it. And the fourth factor, there's a bit more of a macro factor. So that's where we are in history right now. So these delivery companies just had a huge boom over 2020, 2021, because of the pandemic. Everyone was at home and they were like,
how do I get my KFC burger?
Delivery apps can bring them their KFC because customers just like KFC. Because I said KFC so many times, there's probably going to be KFC mid-roll ads running through this video. If you get an ad for KFC, just leave it down below in the comments. Looks like another delivery driver is having a go at KFC. Let's run some ads right in the middle of his video. That should win the customers back over.
Did someone say KFC? I don't care!
If you think across the year, we haven't had a lockdown in the country for quite some time now. Now, when lockdowns were running, delivery apps, super popular. Everyone's getting on board, everyone was giving it a try. Now that there's not any lockdowns anymore and people don't need to use it to get their chicken, they've lost a little bit of the novelty to it all. So there's definitely a decline in orders because people have the option to drive out to a restaurant themselves and they can dine back in at restaurants again. Whereas 2 years ago or a year ago even, restaurants were not open for you to sit down and eat in, or if they were, it was at a super limited capacity. That's all gone now. People just flood into restaurants like seagulls, chasing chips, and unfortunately delivery drivers has been left waiting around in parking lots like, what about me? So let's recap on the 4 pillars. So some zones are filled with drivers. There's no more drivers that can sign up. These zones are capped. These zones are going to not have enough orders to go around. Customers are ordering less because of inflation and they're trying to cut their budgets down. And unfortunately, food delivery services are very expensive. The open schedule is probably the worst thing for drivers as well on DoorDash. By everyone being able to log in at once, there's just not enough orders to go around. Like seriously, the open schedule needs to be removed. This does not work. Finally, it being post-pandemic, times have changed. People are back out at restaurants. People don't need the service anymore. They previously needed the service. Now it's just a luxury to have. So what do you guys think? Do you think I covered it all here? Do you think that 4 pillars covers everything going on with why it's slowing down a little bit for DoorDash? What do you think that DoorDash could do to fix these problems? Is it more marketing vouchers for customers to reboot it, or is it to close off the open schedules? Maybe DoorDash just doesn't have enough customers. And most importantly, what's it been like in your zone, especially for the drivers who have been driving for a bit longer? Have you also noticed a slowdown? I remember the good times when it was busy. I think DoorDash is still pretty good to work for, but I think there's a couple of tweaks that need to be made in order to make it better to drive for. But that's all for today, guys. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments. Make sure you smash the like and subscribe button. And until next time, peace out. What am I doing with my hands? That way. Peace out.